What if I told you there's a car that's driven over 1.2 million miles and still runs like new? Sounds impossible, right? Well, there's a Mercedes W123 taxi in Morocco that's been running nonstop for decades with its original engine intact. That's equivalent to driving to the moon and back twice. Today, we're counting down 12 cars that were engineered to outlast civilizations. And stick around because number one will absolutely shock you. This vehicle is literally unkillable. Top 1 Saab 900, 1978 to 1993. We start our list with a machine born from the sky and built for the toughest winters on Earth. The Saab 900 wasn't just a car, it was a Swedish engineering statement written in steel and stubbornness. When Saab engineers designed this beast, they apparently forgot they were building a civilian vehicle and instead created something that could survive a nuclear winter while still delivering you safely to your destination. Born from aerospace technology, the 900 inherited Saab's aircraft DNA in every bolt and rivet. The turbocharged engines were so overbuilt that mechanics would joke about needing a crane to stress them properly. These motors regularly crossed 300,000 miles while laughing at conventional maintenance schedules. The body construction was absolutely bonkers, with panel gaps tighter than a bank vault and corrosion resistance that made other European cars weep with envy. The ignition switch between the seats wasn't just quirky Swedish design, it was an anti-theft system so effective that car thieves would literally walk away in frustration. In Scandinavian countries, these cars became the unofficial vehicles of choice for people who measured winter in months, not weeks. They'd start in 40-degree Fahrenheit weather when other cars were basically frozen sculptures. The heating system could warm a small apartment, and the seats were designed by people who understood that comfort wasn't a luxury, it was survival equipment. Today, finding a clean 900 turbo is like discovering buried treasure, except this treasure can still hit 60 miles an hour in under 8 seconds after sitting in a barn for 20 years. Top 2 Buick LeSabre, 1992 to 1999. Next up is a classic American sedan that proves simplicity is the ultimate form of reliability. GM's Buick LeSabre from the 90s was the automotive equivalent of that reliable friend who shows up on time, never complains, and somehow always has gas money. While other manufacturers were busy chasing performance numbers, Buick quietly built a sedan that could outlast several presidential administrations. The 3.806 engine was a masterpiece of understated engineering, so smooth and reliable that Buick engineers probably felt embarrassed by how easy their job was. This motor was basically agricultural equipment disguised as automotive technology, designed to run forever on nothing but regular unleaded and the occasional oil change. But here's where it gets interesting. These cars developed a cult following among taxi drivers and traveling salesmen, people who literally lived in their vehicles. A LeSabre could hit 400,000 miles while still having enough life left to teach younger cars about persistence. The ride quality was so smooth that passengers would joke about needing Dramamine for the isolation from road imperfections. The seats were designed by people who understood that American highways were measured in thousands of miles, not city blocks. Consumer Reports consistently rated the LeSabre as one of the most reliable vehicles ever tested. Insurance companies loved them because they rarely broke down, and ADROA loved them because they rarely called for service. The only people who didn't love them were mechanics, because LeSabre owners rarely needed their services. These cars became the unofficial vehicles of America's senior citizens, not because they were slow, but because they were smart enough to recognize genuine quality when they saw it. Top 3 Mercedes-Benz W123, 1976 to 1985. Moving into the realm of legendary German engineering, we find a car that redefined the meaning of the word durable. In the late 1970s, Mercedes-Benz committed what can only be described as automotive blasphemy. They over-engineered a car to such an absurd degree that accountants are probably still having nightmares about it. The W123 series wasn't just built to last, it was constructed like Mercedes expected it to survive the collapse of civilization itself. These cars were so ridiculously overbuilt that Mercedes engineers reportedly used twice the necessary steel in critical areas. The doors weighed as much as modern car hoods, and the body panels were thick enough to deflect small projectiles. In Morocco, These mechanical immortals are still running taxi routes with over 600,000 miles on original engines. That's not a typo, 600,000 miles. The secret was simple. Mercedes threw money at quality like it was going out of style. Every component was tested to destruction, then redesigned to be even stronger. The legendary OM617 diesel engine was so under stress that highway speeds felt like a leisurely warm-up exercise. Here's the beautiful irony. Mercedes lost money on every W123 they sold. The bean counters were tearing their hair out because the engineering costs were economically insane. It was like they forgot they were supposed to be a business and decided to become a charity for people who needed immortal automobiles. After the nuclear apocalypse, there will be cockroaches, Keith Richards, and W123 Mercedes still puttering along German highways. Many owners report these cars actually get more reliable with age, as if they're just getting warmed up after the first 200,000 miles. Top 4 Honda Accord, third generation, 1986 to 1989. Now we look at a Japanese icon that set a standard for perfection that few have ever matched. Honda in the 1980s was like that overachieving student who ruins the curve for everyone else. While American manufacturers were cutting corners faster than NASCAR drivers, Honda engineers were having meetings about meetings to discuss the optimal thread pitch for seat adjustment screws. The third-generation Accord emerged from an era when Honda's philosophy was brutally simple. Build it right the first time, because warranty claims are dishonorable. These engineers would literally lose sleep over a squeaky dashboard, resulting in a mid-sized sedan that could survive anything short of a direct meteor strike. The engines were masterpieces of mechanical simplicity. The fuel injection system was so straightforward that shade tree mechanics could understand it after a weekend workshop. No complicated computer systems, no 17 different sensors waiting to fail. Just pure mechanical efficiency that shifted like Swiss timepieces. Owners routinely reported hitting 300,000 miles with nothing more than oil changes and the occasional timing belt replacement. The attention to detail was borderline obsessive. Door hinges over-engineered to the point of absurdity, weather stripping designed to last decades, and cup holders tested for 100,000 insertion cycles. In developing nations where cars are driven until they literally disintegrate, these Accords are everywhere. Cuban mechanics call them forever cars because they've witnessed them survive conditions that would kill military vehicles. When something finally breaks after 400,000 miles, the parts are so simple that you can probably fix it with basic hand tools and determination. Top 5 Jeep Cherokee XJ, 1984 to 2001. Our next entry is a rugged American legend that refused to follow the rules of planned obsolescence. When AMC engineers designed the Cherokee XJ in the early 1980s, they apparently decided subtlety was for weaklings. Instead of creating just another SUV, they built what can only be described as a motorized middle finger to the concept of planned obsolescence. The XJ wasn't just tough, it was survive the apocalypse and drive through the rubble tough. The unibody construction made it lighter, stronger, and more rigid than traditional body-on-frame SUVs. It was like building a tank out of origami. It shouldn't work, but somehow became legendary. The 4.0L inline-six engine was basically immortal. Jeep engineers apparently confused engine design with building doomsday devices. These motors regularly hit 300,000 miles while being maintained with the automotive equivalent of thoughts and prayers. What made the XJ truly special was its glorious simplicity. No fancy electronics to fail, no complicated all-wheel drive systems with 17 different modes for terrain you'll never encounter. Just a transfer case, solid axles, and enough ground clearance to drive over your problems. The XJ created its own cult, literally. The XJ Mafia defends these vehicles with religious fervor, swapping stories about 500,000-mile Cherokees like fishermen discussing the one that got away. Except these stories are actually true. The U.S. Postal Service bought thousands for rural mail delivery. An organization that goes through vehicles like tissues chose the XJ because they needed something that wouldn't die. 20 years later, many of those mail Jeeps are still running, having been rolled, flooded, and driven through things that shouldn't be driven through. Top 6 Ford Crown Victoria, 1992 to 2011. Here is the car that served as the backbone of American law enforcement and taxi fleets for decades. Ford's Crown Victoria was the automotive equivalent of a cockroach wearing a police uniform. When Ford engineers designed this beast, they apparently asked themselves one crucial question. What if we built a car that could survive being driven by the worst drivers in America 24 hours a day for years on end? The Crown Vic wasn't just a car, it was a mobile fortress designed to withstand abuse that would make other vehicles surrender. Police departments didn't choose it for speed or agility. They chose it because you could drive it into a brick wall, reverse out, and chase bad guys without missing a beat. The 4.6L V8 engine was so under stress that highway speeds felt like asking a powerlifter to pick up a pencil. The cooling system was designed for extended idle times because cops sit a lot. The electrical system could handle enough accessories to power a small radio station. Here's the beautiful irony. When police departments retired these cars with 150,000 hard miles, they were just getting broken in. Taxi companies would buy them and run them for another 300,000 miles. Then regular people would drive them for another 200,000 miles. There are Crown Vics out there with 600,000 miles still doing rideshare duty. That's not longevity, that's basically immortality with a vinyl bench seat. When Ford killed production in 2011, police departments literally stockpiled them, buying extras to cannibalize for parts. Some departments are still running Crown Vics today, 13 years after production ended. When the apocalypse comes, it'll be driven in a Crown Victoria, probably an ex-cop car, and definitely still running. Top 7 Volvo 240, 1974 to 1993. This Swedish brick proved that safety and longevity could go hand in hand for generations. In 1974, Volvo engineers attended a meeting where someone said, "Let's build a car that's safer than a bomb shelter and more reliable than gravity." Then they actually did it. The Volvo 240 wasn't just built to last, it was engineered to outlive your children, your grandchildren, and possibly several minor civilizations. The 240's design philosophy was beautifully simple. Make everything 3 times stronger than necessary, then add more metal just for safety. The result was a car that looked like a refrigerator on wheels, but had the structural integrity of a bank vault. The B21 and B23 engines were so overbuilt that Volvo engineers tested them by running them without oil until they seized, then redesigned them to last even longer. These motors regularly hit 400,000 miles with basic maintenance. Some have passed 500,000 miles. There are documented cases of 240s with over 1 million miles. The genius was in the simplicity. While other manufacturers were adding computers and complexity, Volvo stuck with what worked. Mechanical fuel injection that a farmer could understand, manual transmissions that shifted like rifle bolts, and heating systems that could warm a small house. Volvo 240s became the unofficial car of anti-car enthusiasts, people who don't care about speed, style, or status, but just want something that will start every morning until the sun explodes. In Portland, Berkeley, and Burlington, beat-up 245s are basically political statements on wheels. Scientists studying longevity should probably start with Volvo 240s. Whatever they did to make these things immortal needs to be bottled and studied. Top 8 Toyota Pickup Hilux, 1979 to 1995. Next, we have the truck that became a global symbol of being absolutely indestructible. Toyota in the 1980s looked at American pickup trucks breaking down and said, "Hold our sake." What they created wasn't just a truck. It was the automotive equivalent of that friend who never gets sick, never complains, and somehow shows up to work during Category 5 hurricanes. The Toyota pickup redefined what built to last meant. These trucks were so legendarily indestructible that BBC's Top Gear literally tried to kill one. They drowned it in the ocean, set it on fire, dropped it from a crane, hit it with a wrecking ball, and placed it on top of a building that was then demolished. After all that torture, the damn thing still started. The secret was Toyota's philosophy of Kaizen, continuous improvement taken to psychotic levels. Every weak point discovered in testing resulted in a redesign. Every warranty claim was treated like a personal insult to the engineer who designed that part. The 22R and 22RE engines were masterpieces of simplicity and over-engineering. They made decent power, sipped fuel, and absolutely refused to die. Timing chains instead of belts, simple fuel injection, and cooling systems designed for Death Valley while towing a house. These trucks became the Swiss Army knives of the automotive world. Need to haul concrete? No problem. Cross a river? Sure thing. Survive a war zone? Actually, yes. These trucks became the unofficial vehicles of conflict zones worldwide because they simply wouldn't stop running in places where automotive parts are rarer than unicorn tears. Toyota pickups keep going with maintenance consisting mainly of hope and occasionally hitting things with hammers. Top 9 Chevrolet Suburban, 1973 to 1991. This massive American hauler was built to survive the toughest jobs in the most unforgiving environments. Before SUVs became glorified minivans for people afraid to admit they had kids, there was the Chevrolet Suburban. The 1973 to 1991 generation wasn't just built tough, it was constructed like Chevrolet expected it to be used in post-apocalyptic wastelands where replacement parts would be fashioned from scrap metal and determination. This wasn't a vehicle, it was a four-wheeled survival bunker that happened to have windows. The Suburban was essentially a pickup truck that ate its Wheaties and kept growing. The frame was so overbuilt, it could probably support a small building. Whether you got the small block 350 or big block 454, these engines were so under stress they were practically bored. They weren't highly tuned performance machines. They were lazy torque monsters that could pull trees out of the ground while barely breaking a sweat. The four-wheel drive system was mechanical, not electronic. You pulled a lever, things engaged, and you could drive through hell's front yard. The electrical system was so simple, you could troubleshoot it with a test light and common sense. These Suburbans were designed for real work. Construction companies, oil fields, ranches, and government agencies bought them by the thousands because they needed vehicles that could carry 9 people and their gear through conditions that would make mountain goats nervous. There are Suburbans from this era still working on ranches with 500,000 miles. Still hauling, still towing, still refusing to acknowledge they should have died 300,000 miles ago. They're the automotive equivalent of sledgehammers. Not pretty, not sophisticated, but absolutely perfect for what they do. Top 10 Cummins-powered Dodge Ram, 1989 to 1993. When a commercial-grade engine meets a pickup truck, the result is a drivetrain that simply refuses to quit. In 1989, Dodge did something that seemed insane at the time. They took a commercial truck engine designed for vehicles that never stopped running and stuffed it into a pickup truck. The Cummins 5.9L turbo diesel wasn't just overbuilt. It was engineered for applications where failure meant bankruptcy. The first-generation Cummins Ram wasn't pretty. The interior was basically plastic and hope, and the ride quality was somewhere between agricultural and medieval torture device. But none of that mattered because the drivetrain was essentially immortal. The Cummins engine was rated for 1 million miles in commercial applications. In a pickup truck carrying lighter loads, it was basically just getting warmed up at 300,000 miles. These engines were so under stress that many owners reported better fuel economy after 200,000 miles as everything finally loosened up. The real beauty was in the mechanical simplicity. The fuel system was purely mechanical, a Bosch P7100 injection pump that could run on anything from diesel to filtered French fry oil. No computers, no emissions equipment to fail, just pure mechanical injection timed with Swiss precision. These trucks created their own economy. People would buy rusted-out first-gen Cummins Rams just for the engine, then swap it into newer trucks when those engines failed. The Cummins was so valuable that trucks with blown transmissions and crime-scene interiors still sold for thousands. There are documented cases of these engines hitting 700,000 miles on original internals. Some have passed 1 million miles. 12-valve Cummins became shorthand for unkillable in truck circle. 12 Boston Mercedes-Benz WW26 S-Class, 1979 to 1991. This flagship luxury sedan proved that even the most sophisticated machines could be built to last forever. When Mercedes-Benz set out to build the W126 S-Class, they apparently decided that cost-cutting was a dirty phrase that should never be uttered in polite company. This wasn't just a luxury car, it was an engineering manifesto written in steel and leather that declared war on the very concept of mechanical failure. The level of over-engineering was so extreme, it bordered on pathological. The doors closed with a bank vault thunk that made other luxury cars sound like tin cans. The paint wasn't just applied, it was layered like a Renaissance masterpiece, with primer, base coat, color coat, and clear coat that could survive nuclear blasts. The engines were built with tolerances so tight that Mercedes engineers needed special clean rooms just to assemble them. These weren't high-strung performance engines. They were understressed masterpieces that could run at 80 mph all day while barely breaking a sweat. The climate control system was designed by engineers who apparently believed that maintaining perfect cabin temperature was a fundamental human right. It had redundant systems, backup systems for the redundant systems, and enough vacuum lines to confuse a spaghetti chef. Here's the kicker. Mercedes lost money on every W126 they sold. The amount of engineering, materials, and sheer bloody-minded perfectionism was economically insane. It was like they forgot they were a business and decided to become a charity for people who wanted immortal luxury cars. Today, well-maintained W126s regularly appear in developing nations as high-end taxis with 600,000 miles, still purring along like mechanical aristocrats who refuse to acknowledge they should have died 400,000 miles ago. Top 11 Toyota Land Cruiser FJ60, 1980 to 1990. Finally, we reach the pinnacle of automotive durability, a vehicle that has conquered every corner of the globe. At the top of our list sits the Toyota Land Cruiser 60 series. And honestly, nothing else even comes close. This wasn't just built to last forever, it was engineered to last forever while crossing the Sahara, fording rivers, and climbing mountains that would make billy goats nervous. Toyota didn't just over-engineer the Land Cruiser, they apparently engineered it for a different planet where the laws of mechanical failure don't apply. The FJ60 and FJ62 were the culmination of decades of Toyota, learning what breaks in the most hostile environments on Earth, then designing those problems out of existence. The straight-six engines weren't powerful, but they were essentially agricultural equipment masquerading as automotive engines. These motors were so under stress that highway speeds felt like asking a sumo wrestler to lift a coffee cup. They regularly hit 400,000 miles. Some have passed 600,000, and there are documented examples with over 1 million miles still running on original internals. Every component was designed assuming it would need to work in places where the nearest mechanic was 500 miles away, and the only available tools were rocks and determination. The manual transmission was so robust it could probably be used as a boat anchor. What really set the 60 series apart was its role as the UN's vehicle of choice for the world's worst places. When humanitarian organizations needed vehicles that absolutely, positively had to work in conditions that would make Mad Max cry, they bought Land Cruisers. These trucks have been through wars, natural disasters, and humanitarian crises on every continent. They've been shot at, blown up, rolled down mountains, and submerged in rivers, and they keep running. The simplicity was beautiful. Manual everything. No computers, no complex electronics, just mechanical systems that could be fixed with basic tools and determination. Toyota lost money on every Land Cruiser because they refused to compromise on quality. Today, finding a clean FJ60 or FJ62 is like striking gold, except gold is softer and less valuable. These trucks have transcended mere transportation to become symbols of mechanical immortality. That's your countdown of 12 cars that were built to last forever. Which one shocked you the most? Drop your guess in the comments below. I bet half of you didn't expect that Land Cruiser fact. If these stories of mechanical legends change the way you look at the cars on the road, make sure to subscribe and like the video. We are digging up the history they tried to bury. Let's build a future that lasts. Our next treasure trove of automotive history is opening soon.